For the better part of my career, more than 20 years, I've been a corporate girl in supply chain management and logistics or classical marketing. But come 2020, COVID and the Great Reset, I got an opportunity to work in a non-profit organization which was helping young unemployed people to be able to break out of that trap of unemployment by connecting them with their first employment opportunity, allowing them to build experience, build that reference letter, and then move on to bigger opportunities. My name is Novantum Kulwana, and in this season of my life, my ambition is to help the emerging social entrepreneur to be able to flatten that learning curve, scale up their projects, and deliver more impact quicker than ever before. Join us on the NPO Bootcamp as we show you how to level up your social enterprise. Hi podcast family, this is Novantum Kulwana, and we are so thankful that you keep tuning into the NPO Bootcamp each week. Thank you. In today's episode, we are serving aha moments, powerful insights and action items with the founder of the character company, Jaco Van Schalkwyk. So if you're a mom or a caregiver to a young boy, or you have young boys in your social circle who are growing up with no father figure, I invite you to pull up a chair and take some notes. I'd also like to invite that guy who has fathered a child or children and for whatever reason is or has disengaged. Hello Jaco, and thank you so much for flying all the way from Cape Town to be with us on this discussion.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So Jaco, let us begin with why you saw it fit to bring the character company to life.
So for me, this has been a very personal journey, very personal and very spiritual journey. So I grew up with an absent father, and the impact of that is something that I have typically, like a young boy, did not understand when I was 7 or 8 years old. This usually starts really hitting you in your early teens, pre-adolescence, and by then it's often too late because so much of the cement is already set with regards to how you want to operate in life, and how you're going to have to look after yourself. There's no one else there for you, and that kind of sets the stage, or set the tune for what life looks after that, and it becomes quite challenging in many ways. And I must say, as I'm stepping into the journey of fatherlessness through the character company, it's almost like every day there's some new things I discover out of my own journey with regards to that. So I've been in the NGO space for 24, 25 years now, character company 11 years, and it started at a space where I really was burned out. Even in the NGO space, I got burned out because it was the affirmation, it's like, if I can do this better, if I can, perform better, then I will be better. And it also lit the stage for my spiritual journey, my relationship with God as a son. And for me, all of that just kind of clashed together. And at that stage, I was just thinking, man, what is it that is driving this and kind of insanity? It's just like exhaustion of trying to prove myself the whole time. I'm definitely not out of it yet, so it's a work in progress. But the character company came out of that, just sitting and saying, well, what is it? And then realizing that the stuff that I needed as a young boy that was setting me up into the kind of man that I wanted to be, but not understand. And that's where it started. Wow. So character company was born.
So you were actually already operating in the NPO space before the character company. Yeah. Give us a flavor of what you were doing then, before we get into the real action.
Yeah. So I was in hands-on community development. I became involved in a community project that was doing community work, medical care. We had a small hospice at some point, a childcare center, skills development project. So a whole plethora of stuff that we got involved in, and so it was very hands-on.
What was the name of the organization?
It was called Trafilwe. It's now called Live Lansera. Yeah.
Trafilwe.
In Lansera.
Okay, so you were not always a Cape Townian.
No. I'm a young Cape Townian.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So tell us about the Trafilwe project.
Yeah, so it was very much a very hands-on environment. Came into it, really just got called into it in a space that was, my life was completely turned upside down. Came out of a corporate space, with all my intentions to be rich and powerful. And I was reminded recently that I'm rich and powerful in all the different ways, the ways that God intended for it to be. Yeah. And but it was just this driven space where I needed to, how do I perform here? And looking back at it, just seeing how God just used my personality, the things that I'm really good at, which is essentially the groundbreaking work. I love that. I enjoy the seeing the vision and then preparing it, so that other people can come on and, you know, build the road better afterwards and travel easier, I would imagine.
Wow, Jaco, that is so amazing. You know, it is such a small world. We were talking to another non-profit organization that's in the food security space, and the lady also had some history with the Refueler project. That's right. When you mentioned, we're like, I've heard that name before. Okay, so we with the Refueler, and then how do we then transition into the character company?
Yeah, so like I said, at that stage, I was just like, you know, everything kind of collapsed around me. I'm just really exhausted from
Atrophy.
Yeah, just you know, the space where you live in constantly, where you try and get your affirmation from everywhere else other than your identity as a beloved son, which is what the world does to us. You know, what we easily go into, because that's where, you know, the world creates a space, a gap, and that the world then tells you they can fill, and it's always empty. And so you keep on chasing after that, and no one can, you know, that's not sustainable. That's not what God asked of us in the first place. And I just burned out completely. And and it was that stage. I think part of it was just like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I've done my part. I want to go and work in Sandton, drive a nice car, see what a payslip looks like. That was my idea. So, and luckily, as very often happens, God saved me from myself in the process. And and I just thought, you know, what do I do with this? I can rebel against this. I can really just walk away from it all. But there is something I can do with my hurt, my brokenness, and that can prevent it from just one other person, and that would be worth it. And that's where the seed of the Carriage Company was born. It's just planted. Just, you know, God kind of opened this up and said. And what I would always, you know, like, I think what we would refer is like, great idea, here's like $10 million, go for it. No, that is not the way it works. It's like, well, you've learned some lessons, there's some more to learn, so there you go. And like, I'm there, we'll follow, you know. And so the journey has been phenomenal. It's been intense. The journey has kept on breaking me open to expose the stuff that I had to deal with. Because if we don't do that, it will come back. You know, if we try and ignore stuff, it will come back. You know, God's more concerned about my character than my comfort all the time. So I had to be very open to, what does this look like for me? How do I unpack this for me? Because if I can understand it for myself, I can mentor that to a younger boy. And so, you know, looking back at it, a lot of the stuff that we do at the Character Company came out of a deep desire for stuff that I would have wanted to do with my dad. You know, if I look at a camp, you know, the hikes, the wrestling, the tickling, the tucking at night, the mud fights, the swim in the river. I mean, essentially, I would have just loved that, to have that with my dad, or to have anyone that walked into my space at that stage of my life and said, let's do this together. And it's strange, because we fill so many of those gaps for these boys that it's actually, in a way, you take away the desire that they have for that, because they have it. So there's not this longing for them to have that, because they have it all the time. Yeah. And so you have to adjust that along the way as well.
So if you don't mind me asking, Jaco, what happened in your family? What happened with your dad?
So my dad was, so we work typically with 4 categories of absent fathers.
Oh, okay.
You have a father that passed away.
Yes.
So father's not there anymore. Then you have a father that was never in the picture, so the boy doesn't even know his daddy.
Yeah.
It's, you know, mom wanted a child, but she kind of figured she doesn't want a deadbeat dad around, so that's there. And then you have dads that are either, you know, it's like divorced, or it's just dropped out of the process, and like, I don't see my dad like in months. Lots of promises, the broken promises, you know, that difficult space. And then the 4th category, which is where I grew up in, is dad's present but absent. So he's in the house, but not part of my life. And it could be just because that's my story, but for me, that's almost like the hardest of the 4, because like, if my father passed away, I would understand why he's not in my life. But when I wake up in the morning and I go to bed tonight and he's not there, like twice a day, I'm reminded that I'm not good enough. And that's unfortunately what happens with a young boy in that space. Like, all the conversations with boys and with men, every one of them without fail has gone, you know, what's wrong with me? Like, I mean, I've sat with boys and like, they're crying. It's like, what have I done wrong? Why does my dad not want to spend time with me? Why am I not good enough for this? And so that's the foundation that starts. It's like, I'm not good enough.
How old are these boys?
So typically that question starts at about 7, I would imagine. So we work with boys between the ages of 5 and 12. because that's also where your dad's impact is the highest. But there's also the time where a boy really walks around with the question, like, do I have what it takes? Can I do this? Am I strong enough for it? Up until 5, where mom's impact is highest, that's a space for love and protection. It's the, let me call it, it's a soft space. It's like the cuddly space. It's like, when I bump my toe, mom's going to be there, and it's going to be a plaster and a sweet tea and a kiss on the forehead, and I'm being held, and, it's all great. And that makes mom also feel great. We get that from our children.
Yeah.
But the older, then it changes.
Yeah, because there's another group that you didn't mention, which is where the dad is in prison. I don't know how big a deal it is in South Africa, but over the weekend, I was watching a music video. Maverick City, it's a gospel outfit in the US. Maverick City and Kirk Franklin, they recorded a music video in a correctional facility in, I think, Miami, Florida, somewhere there. They had 1,300 inmates, all male. And when I was watching that, it made me wonder, does it make a difference in the life of a child when their dad is absent as to the reason why? You've given us 4 categories the dad is passed. Does it make a difference?
Definitely, because it adds to shame. I remember there was a time when someone asked me, about my father, and I didn't want to go through the explanation. You feel like I'm just too exhausted for this. It's like almost like every time it scratches open some wounds. That's why Father's Day is at schools, or boys and father camp to schools. Considering the statistics, I don't understand why that's not changing. That's very difficult. So if you understand the reasoning why my dad's not present, my dad's in prison. Now, either that could be I've grown up in a space where that's almost like a status symbol, because he's if you look at in specific areas in our country where gangsterism is very high, that could be almost like a generational thing. It's like my dad's in prison, his dad was in prison, his dad was in prison.
You're kidding me, Rob?
Oh, yeah, no, it becomes a...
And then this is something I'm proud of?
If I'm, it comes with some accreditation. Like if I'm going to go into...
I got bragging rights.
Yeah. No,
you're kidding me?
Yeah. But if other boys, it would be like there's just too much shame around it. So for most of them, it would be... That's why boys will lie about it. Boys will, like, oh, my dad's on a trip, or, he's away, or my dad's dead. It's just stuff like that. So I don't have to explain, because if I have to explain why, it means I have to tell you why I'm not good enough. Like if I tell you my dad's not around for no other reason than something that would make sense, like either prison or, away on a trip, or he's dead, that means that we have to then unpack why I'm not good enough. So definitely that's a big thing.
I never saw that coming. So let's understand the different challenges that come about that affect each boy depending on why dad is not in the picture. We've tackled some of the prison ones, but which group is the biggest in terms of having moms and dad?
Sure. The biggest in South Africa, let me say the one that's the most hidden almost is the one where dads are present at home and absent. So if we look at the statistics, so that we talk about 70% of kids are growing up in single parent homes. So that's statistics that's taken from birth certificates where only a mom is registered. So we're saying, well, dads are not present there. So if the dad hasn't even made the effort to register the child, which means the mom had to do it. So she's just left the dad off it. So then we think, okay, like in South Africa, we always like, oh, there's always a silver lining. There's 30%. There's some parts of the road that doesn't have potholes, and there's, we have some electricity sometimes. So there's a 30% of boys. I would say, talking to some other NGOs in that space, I would say that 30%, I think it's closer to 25%. Of that bracket is still fathers that are absent. So you can look at like 10% of...
Stop. So if we take 10 boys, 7 of them, the dad isn't even on the birth certificate. And then there's three of them that live with the dad in the house. But 2.5, the dad is
almost out, yeah.
Is disengaged.
Yeah. If I look at our experience of as many as 4 out of 5 boys do not have a positive male role model in their lives. So if you look at 10 boys, I'm going to tell you that close to 8 of those boys either do not have a father in their lives or no positive male role models. And I've had that conversation in prisons with young men, young trial-awaiting prisoners, 17, 18, 19 years old. Out of the 10 we spoke to, 8 had no relationship with their fathers. Now, that's a very small sample, but if you look at all the other statistics that goes around, and if we look at the outcome of it, if we look at what goes on in our societies, in our country, then we have to ask ourselves, well, that doesn't make sense. When you look at the media, if I look at just the stories that I picked up last week, that should stop our country dead still until we figure this out. that has just become like mainstream stuff, like, oh, another this, another that. Then you link that back, you understand that the majority, by far, of our boys are growing up without positive male role models in their lives. The impact on society is massive.
So if we just reverse and go back to what you said earlier, if my dad is not in my life, it causes shame in my heart and a great deal of hurt, to the point where sometimes, in order to not have to go over and over again, I just tell the world my father's dead. Yes. And sometimes my dad is in the house with me. Okay, so if there's a dad that's thinking, I did not know that, how do I fix that? What must he do?
So that's very important. I always say to dads, when you listen to this, and dads typically are, there's not going to be a lot of them listening to this because they're busy. So because that comes back to what we're dealing with regards to confused and broken masculinity, and what that does for me. So like I've had more than enough conversations with men and my own experiences in life where you go, man, I just don't know how to be a dad. I don't know how to be a husband. I don't know how to do the yard work. I don't know how to fix a car. So, but
why? Because my father wasn't active in my life. Is this just a cycle repeating itself?
It becomes a cycle, but it also becomes, and I can say it as a man, I think it becomes a bit of a scapegoat. It's a space where I like, oh man, I'm just so tired of all of this. So like at work, I know a little bit what I'm doing. So let me go there. I'm gonna put everything in there because it's also survival. Because all the hours I spend there also helps to pay for the stuff that makes me look better as a man. The nicer car, the nicer house. I mean, that's why you talk to men that have lost their jobs and they're going like, I'm not a man. I don't feel like a man anymore. I've just, And
because my sense of identity comes from that label, from that title. So if you take that away, I don't know who I am anymore.
And that's the problem, because it comes down to the identity issue. So if you look at a picture of this, so I'm a pictures person, so I'm always trying to understand it that way. So if I plug in, look at the cables around us. I plug in all these cables in all different places, like my car, my relationships, my bank balance, my, how well my kids are performing at school, whatever, my work, how important I am, my golf score, all of that stuff. Now life is crazy. So I'm dancing between all these things and I'm getting entangled into this. And the moment I get entangled and I pull out the plug of one of these things, so suddenly I lost my job, or I don't get that promotion, or my child's not doing well at school, I'm having troubles with my relationship. Every time something like that pulls out, part of my identity goes missing. And if one of them is by far the majority of it, I might get retrenched. That's a big part of my identity that's suddenly gone. My wife cheats on me because I'm never at home, and now I feel it's my fault, which is a whole nother conversation. That really, really becomes a dangerous space. That's why men isolate, because I'm not telling anyone. That's why when you have conversations I've it's shocking how many conversations actually you get in where people go like, man, that guy committed suicide last week. I didn't see that coming. Like we had a conversation 3 weeks ago. You would never have a conversation where you go like, yeah, and I saw that was going to happen at some point. It's never that question. So when that happens, it's dangerous. When your identity is linked to your sonship, it's just plugged in to Abba. And so you can dance around as much as you can at the bottom. You cannot plug that out. And that's the key thing that for me in my life that I'm working to understand and unpack better. Because all these other things are temporary, they are messy, they drive me into spaces of shame, which is the worst place I can be as a man, and then I isolate. That's why 5 times more men commit suicide than women. That's why the leading cause of death for young men between 18 and 25 right now is suicide.
In South Africa?
In South Africa. Yeah. And so that's what drives those statistics. And so, when we talk about the work we do with men, it's all about trying to get those conversations going. Where we go and say, it's hard. It's hard to admit to another guy that I'm dealing with this stuff. It's hard to admit to another guy that I'm finding these challenges. But when I do, that vulnerability drives a space where I can make accountability partners, where I can be accountable to someone. And that's what we teach to the boys. But try and get back to the question that I have now 500 things to answer.
The question was if there's a guy who sees himself in that 30% where he is living under the same roof with the young boy, but the young boy is telling a story to justify his dad's absence. What can he do?
You need to connect, the very first thing. Now the problem here is you need to connect into a space where you first surround yourself with other men. There are 4 very key things for us as men to understand that I need in my life. I need to belong to a group of healthy relationships. I'm not talking about when I talk about to a bunch of guys about my challenges in my relationship that's going to drag me to a pub and we're going to drink too much and I'm waking up in someone else's house tomorrow. I'm not talking about those guys. And that happens way too often. I'm talking about guys that are going to say, man, I get you. Or maybe I don't understand it, but I'm here for you. And bring in a value system and your faith values. And so we are going to be there for you. We're holding you accountable. You need to play in a team where you have the same goals. It's like, like if we consider we're in a battlefield, like we have to have situational awareness. And like I have to understand, because I think sometimes for us as men, and I found myself in that spaces, it's like I'm on a battlefield and then I get upset because people are shooting at me. I'm like, but why would you shoot at me? And they're like, well, dude, you're in a battle. You're fighting a war here. And so you have to surround yourself with people that can, just think of your basic war movies that we love. It's like there's people around me that protect me. I don't have to worry about the left and the right because like my job is to protect the guy on my left and the guy on my right. And so we all have that unity.
So what kind of setting does this happen in? How does this happen, this camaraderie around men?
So it'll be different things. Sadly, it's very scarce. So for us, the character company, it happens with something we call Men Around Fire, where we drag men into that conversation.
Okay, so that's how you sort it out for yourself.
Yeah, and so we'll have some. So I'll tell you about that. But I think coming back to that, to the question about what do I do is I need to stay connected.
Okay.
I need to find a mentor. I need to find someone that I can connect with, because like if it hasn't happened up until now, it's not because necessarily I don't want to. It's because I just don't know how to. Like if I'm stuck in all of this, I don't know how to get out of it. Okay. And I often say to guys, like, when you listen to this today, just like clear your diary this afternoon if your son or your daughter is got a game at school. Just that's more important than anything else you can do. Or go home a little bit earlier. Don't stay at work until 7 o'clock tonight. That's dangerous for you. It's firstly you get overworked. That's an isolated space. It's a quiet space. There's no accountability there. If you are struggling with your relationships, there's someone going to be there that's going to make you feel better about yourself. It comes back to the saying we use with the boys often. If you don't want to get stabbed in a bar fight, then don't go to a bar. It's very simple. You have to start thinking about what are the spaces I do not want to get myself into. Don't go like, well, let me see where I can test my levels. It's like, don't go there. And so I have to find it. Go home earlier. Stop at the shop. Get some charcoal, some firelighters, get some boerewors and some bread rolls. Go home. Tell your son, listen, we're going to make a fire tonight. I'm going to show you how to make a fire. And if I don't know how to, then Google it on the way home if you have to. Phone me. I'll tell you how to make a fire. Or any one of the boys in our program can show you how to do that. And then just do something. And don't try and fix everything that one moment. Just do it. Even if you don't talk, just like help. Don't get angry if it does it wrong. Just start building the space. And that's how but you can't do that on your own. You have to be. We talk about it takes a village to raise a child. Well, what does that village look like? It's like, for most of us, that is a desolated, burned down, war-torn space. Like there's no one in there. It's like there's no village. And it comes with, I don't know where to look for it, but also like the shame thing that comes back for me is like, I don't want to ask. Like I'm struggling with my relationship with my teenage son, but I don't want to ask someone else to help me here because there's so many things I feel I'm failing in. And like now after a year, like, man, if you're doing this wrong or you're engaging wrong here. And if we can start changing that, if I can surround myself with men that's going to have these conversations with me, that's going to have my heart and my back, then I'm walking into a space where it's different. Like when I grew up, there was a Tani Mariki across the road. Man, I tell you, I wouldn't try stuff. Now, unfortunately, again, it was there was a father there that was clocked out. It should have been Uncle John or someone, but Tani Mariki, like she would sort you out, and you wouldn't go tell your mom that you got in trouble there, or you got hiding at a house because you'll get hiding at your house because you embarrassed your family. It's like, so there was again, I'm thinking back now. There's a lot of the moms that was doing some of that, but what was missing there for me as a boy was like I needed my dad in that space, and so do that. Just you have to reach out, and if you don't know how to, then like you have no excuse any further. Like you phone the character company and you get my number and you say I'm stuck here, and we will help you to get unstuck because. There's nothing more important for us to fix masculinity so that we can fix masculinity for the next generation and the next generation, because it becomes a cycle.
Okay. So this is
not sure if I answered any question.
So this is talking to that guy who sees himself in the 30%. I need to get connected. I need to ask for help where I'm struggling so that I can connect with my child and overcome whatever barriers are helping me get stuck in broken masculinity. There's help available. So what happens to the 70% that are not even on a birth certificate and are listening and hearing how the little boy is trapped in shame and just not a good place, and we're thinking, I did not know that. I want to change this for my son. What do I do?
That's a hard conversation, and it starts with, brother, you need to step up to the plate. I mean, it's unacceptable. Like we cannot live a life, and it's difficult because we're talking now to, and in that audience there are men that are obviously being. There's conversations around men that don't have access to their children because they're not paying maintenance and stuff, and so moms are like, no, you're not coming here. Children are used as pawns in adult games all the time, and that needs to stop. And so maybe the conversation is not just to men, it's to men and women, it's to moms and dads out there. It's like, stop playing games. Like, you're destroying a generation with this. And your son and daughter growing up in a space where, like, if you're bad mouthing your ex in front of your children, then you are setting a life. I mean, you're teaching, you're mentoring a space where that becomes okay. Like, I can talk to other people about other people like that. I can talk about women like that because my dad does. I can be disrespectful because my dad is. So you start having those things. So it's a difficult conversation. There's a lot of role plays in there, but to the men in that space, it is, you have to step up to the plate. Yeah. Like, your son is going to date my daughter at some stage, or want to date my daughter. He's not going to be. He's going to want to. It's like, you have to do something.
Yeah.
And I've told dads, I've said to dads, listen, either you step up to the plate or you step aside. Because if you're not going to mentor your son, we will mentor him. Because he deserves someone in his life. It should be you. And if you don't know, in your excuses, we can help with that. So we can sort that out. But that's a space. I'm not even sure if that's a space necessarily that's filled with shame. I just think it's a space where it's become just okay. It's like,
oh, as in the guy that's like, not showing up for the kid.
Hey, listen, again, the world offers us a space where I can live whatever I want to. There's no responsibility. There's no accountability. I mean, I can father children as many as I want and know and don't know about. I don't have to take any responsibility. And it becomes a vicious cycle in that, in fatherlessness. And that's a dangerous space.
Jaco, I'm glad you brought in the mom that is denying access to a dad that is interested, because I'm hearing a lot about that. How prevalent is that phenomenon?
I think it's a lot more prevalent than we think. Yeah. So we don't typically deal in that space, but because I network with a lot of other NGOs, often the conversations come up. I've heard that there's the NGOs that specifically deal with that. There are men that struggle with that. I mean, there's some dads out there that really want to be dads. So it's like even the conversation needs to be like, if you're going to end up in a divorce, like the space to be, you start negotiating is half time, like 50-50. You don't start with negotiating on maybe every second weekend. Like, what are you doing? This is your child. You fathered this child. You have a responsibility, but it's part of who you are. And so, like, I mean, on my head, I can't imagine that I would go into a place where I'm going, okay, well, every second weekend's great because it gives me 2 weeks on my own and 2 weekends on my own. It's like, that's, I can play again. I mean, that's like, then I'm not surrounded by the right friends. There's no one that speaks into my life. I'm like, where are the guys that's going to walk in and go like, hey, brother, but what are you doing here? Like, what do you mean you're not seeing your children literally 50% of the time that you can, and making every effort to build into their lives? And so,
can I just interrupt you? But I'm sure you've come across Dr. James Dobson from Focus on the Family. Yes. So there's a course he's got a course called Bringing Up Boys. And when I've got 2 sons, and when I was pregnant with my first child, they ran it at the church that we were going to. So my husband and I went. And Dr. James Dobson was talking about how many years ago, this is because you brought up the topic of divorce. How many years ago, when a couple got divorced, it was almost a foregone conclusion that the kids were going to go with a mom. Yeah. Unless maybe she was an unfit mom. Unless there were very strong and compelling reasons why the mom was not fit, the kids would go with her. And what they found out was that the girls would fare better in a divorced environment because they kept their primary role model, and the boys didn't. And now the tide is turning as more and more they start to look at what's in the best interest of the child. And then it's not automatically mom. So boys are getting a better chance to stay with their primary role model, which goes to what you were saying about how when you're negotiating this from the get-go, you need to be looking at least equal time for everyone.
No, definitely. It also is going to depend on the age of your child, with I want to say primary caregiver should be. And because again, we're going, I mean, if you think of that, then the mistakes that we're making from a judicial system is like we're looking at who's the primary role model or caregiver would be where there's more stability from a financial point of view. And then that's actually not the case. I mean, you talk to, I mean, look at kids that are growing up in poor environments, in no running water, no electricity, but there's a mom and a dad, and there's not a lot of that. But those are healthy families. Those are a lot healthier families than people that live in gated communities with lots of money that they're trying to throw at the problem with an absent father. So there's something wrong with that picture, but it has to be an equal space. And then we have to get to the conversation where we're talking to moms and dads and going, you cannot use your children. Yeah. You have to, for the best interest of your child, you have to sacrifice some of your own desires, your own ego, specifically, starting with your ego and your pride here. You have to go like, it's not about me being right, it's about my children.
So like, what would you say to that mom where the guy is not contributing financially at all, and it is tough for her? The financial load is overwhelming for her. And that is what is informing her position to say, if you don't pay papgeld, you don't see that child. How would you speak to that mom?
So I think you would have two scenarios. You have one where dad perhaps just like cannot. He's. I mean, you're looking at two households to run. There's a financial implication, and you have a. I mean, like if you're a dad that doesn't play a role there, you have to play some role. I mean, you can't just not do anything, and so it's difficult. But it comes back to, it's actually not. I mean, what are you putting on the table? Are you putting, how do I punish him for making me suffer, or are you putting on the table what is going to be the best for my children? Yeah. And what does it look like? Can we have that conversation? And with someone else present and saying, for the sake of my children, do I actually want to keep them away from their dad? Is their dad unfit to be a parent just because he's not paying papgeld? So those are deeper conversations. But he should have access because he's got something to give. He's got something. His absence creates more problems than anything else. And it's difficult because, I mean, we've got a lot of single moms on our program, and some of them are really struggling, and some of them, there are dads that are, I mean, we've got dads that have started second families that are ignoring the mom.
So we've got amnesia now. We don't remember the other.
Yeah. Like that's very, very hard. And so some of it's not going to work out. He wants nothing to do with this whole old family, so to speak. But there's a boy in there that is hurting and that is desperate just to get something from his dad.
You mentioned 2 minutes ago how the absence of the dad in the family creates more problems. What are some of those problems?
I also have to say sometimes the absent father is not the worst thing. If you look at an abusive space, then that becomes, an absent father is a safer environment.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away the emotional need from the child. Yes. So like you have an abusive father, you take that out, there's no more abuse, but you don't change the deeper inside thing that I just need to hear from my dad.
Yeah.
There's something that I need to hear from my dad that a mom can't give me because I need to hear from my dad. And so we have that conversation with moms often because moms get like, I've told him this a million times and you tell him once and he listens, there's just something there. So that's difficult.
So some of the problems that is created when the dad is not in the family?
So first and foremost, it is, you look at just the basic stuff of a single parent home. I mean, the pressures, the financial pressures, the time pressures. Mom that has to play roles that she is not made for. And if you look at a single parent household where there's a dad only, and there are some of them, you would have the same scenario. You have a dad that has to play roles that he can't play. And you have to then bring people into that space. So you have that, but there's a emotional need there that is very, very deep. Because mom struggles also in this space because of mom's heart and a desire to be mom. It's where do you draw the balance between being mom and being a friend? And like a mom and a son, that household space becomes a new partnership. And so it's like, and then today it is, listen, we're having some rules, like you can't play on my phone. Tomorrow I'm exhausted. I just cannot fight this battle. So just take it, And so that creates confusion. Like, for us, with boys, it's about the boundaries. It's about the rules. Like we at camp, we're saying, why do we have rules? The rules is the fence. Like we all graze here and you want to push the fence and the fence will grow eventually, but this is safe, this is secure. And boys flourish under that. They'll test the boundaries, but they flourish. You take today you've got electric fence, tomorrow you've got no fence. It's like, that's major confusion. And so now and we typically, we're going to push against it anyway. We're going to try our luck as boys all the time. And so if there's no boundaries or they keep on shifting, it creates major challenges. And you also then look at like how does that flow out into new relationships? You know, like also you have a boy at 7-year-old that's now the man of the house. You know, he has to look after his 2-year-old sister, perhaps. I mean, we've seen that often. I mean, there's a whole lot of roles. Like
he has to look after the sister because mom's now out at work.
Yes.
And there isn't enough money maybe for a caregiver.
Yeah. Or I mean,
so what does that do in the mind of that little boy?
You grow up too fast. Like, you know, as a 7-year-old, I've came to 7-year-olds and I see what 7-year-olds do at camp. They're adventurous, explorers, they want to climb trees, they want to play outside. They do not want to be responsible for cooking and cleaning the house and being a babysitter and then being shouted at because they're a boy and, you know, and then being, that's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of, plus it's a completely unsupervised environment. Like I'm no one is home. I come home from school. I'm alone at home until 7 o'clock tonight. Mom has to work. You know, we have to keep life going, but there's no one here. So what do I do as a boy? Suddenly there's all this freedom. Like I've not been mentored into a space of freedom. I've not been given the opportunity to understand how to deal with even my emotions. Like I'm not allowed to play outside in the park because that's dangerous, but I could be inside my house, free access to the internet. That is 1,000,000 times more dangerous. Rather throw the phone away and let your child play in the park outside. I mean, that's like if you think of the basic concept of, like, I read something that I'm part of the last generation that had pre and post internet. So like
pre and life before internet and life with okay, got it. Me too.
I use a lot of my energy to create imaginary places so I don't get bored. A lot of it. And so you had to play and you had to build roads and plant stuff. And I mean, like that builds a whole lot of stuff. Now you have to use a lot more energy and a lot more brain power to switch off from not being bored. Like if you think the amount of stuff that we're not even closely remote to can handle, like we can't handle the amount of stuff that comes into our space. Like if you're on your phone 5 minutes while you're drinking coffee, in that 5 minutes, you're going to have more information in your face than people at some point in a lifetime.
I know,
I mean, it's like, and you go into that in the day, and it's billboards, and it's this, and it's news, and it's like, and all of it's bad news because that attracts listenership and readership. Yeah. So, you know, stuff like that. So it's a dangerous space. And so, like, there's just not enough mentorship in here. There's not enough going like, okay, guys, you need phones, but in this space, no phones. Like in our program, if you bring a phone to camp, I'll show you can fly. So, Steve, doesn't happen. You hand it in when we get here. Everyone's got your business contact details. Doesn't happen here. Man, and I tell you, you get boys to climb trees and play spaceships and, you know, like all kinds of stuff because they start using imagination.
Yeah.
It's a healthy space.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Jaco, I've read somewhere that if a kid doesn't have a dad in the home, somehow it can affect their academic performance. Have you found that?
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of statistics around that. I must also say, there's statistics that backs that, but a lot of the stuff is just, from the experiences, the personal experiences, and also what we see with the boys.
Yes.
But there's huge studies that's been done with regards to just how many boys end up in prison, how many boys end up on drugs. I mean, suicide stats are driven by that. Bad academic performance is driven by that. And so it's definitely, it has a major influence as well.
This is heavy stuff, eh?
It is.
I'm sometimes getting the feeling like, there's a lot of work to be done, and I don't know if there's enough hands on deck. But maybe that's a nice way to segue into the character company and the work that you do.
Yes.
So let's pick that up after this break.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Jaco.